Well, I learned something new this week about Buddha nature. I have always considered Buddha nature to be the potential that exists in all sentient beings to become a Buddha, and that most of us, almost all of us, are not capable of becoming a Buddha because our Buddha nature is overlaid by so many defilements, primarily those associated with the three poisons of greed, anger, and illusion or delusion or ignorance. Well, this week I was told that in Jodo Shinshu or Shin Buddhism or True Pure Land Buddhism, which is the lineage that was founded by Shinran Shonin, that human beings don't have inherent Buddha nature. Now this kind of threw me for a loop, and I wanted to explore it further, and also got some input from a couple of teachers who I respect. And as I was poking my nose more into this question, I went to the Princeton Dictionary of Buddhism, and in there they talk about the origins of the notion of Buddha nature. In other words, that in the earliest Mahāyāna sutras, the fundamental substance of the mind is said to be luminous, drawing on a strand of Buddhism that has its antecedents in statements like the following. Quote, "The mind, O monks, is luminous, but defiled by adventitious defilements," close quote. And then the description of the concept goes on in the dictionary to talk about the fact that because the bodhisattva realizes that the Buddha element is inherent in him at the moment that he or she arouses the aspiration for enlightenment and enters the bodhisattva-vehicle, he or she achieves the profound endurance or ksanti that enables him or her to undertake the arduous training over incalculable eons of time. And that training, of course, will lead to Buddhahood. Now, the dictionary also points out that the buddhadhātu, which is synonymous with Buddha nature apparently, is a seminal concept of the Mahāyāna and leads to the development of such related doctrines as the matrix of the tathāgatas, which is the tathāgatagarbha that we've seen referenced, for example, prominently in the Lankavatara Sutra. That term, tathāgatagarbha, is also crucial in the development of the teachings of such indigenous East Asian schools of Buddhism as Chan, which telescopes the arduous path of the bodhisattva into a single moment of sudden awakening to the inherency of the Buddha nature. So this is what I would have thought of as a more traditional way of understanding Buddha nature. But how do Shin Buddhists think of it? Okay, the way Shinran apparently conceptualized Buddha nature is that human beings don't have it to begin with. But I would say if we have the tathāgatagarbha, namely the womb of the Tathāgata, that what Amida Buddha provides to us is the seed which germinates in the womb, so to speak, if that makes any sense. So the notion here is that Amida provides Buddha nature to us. He provides the seed, which then gives us the capability, the potential to become Buddha, of course, at the time of our death when we enter the Pure Land. And so what is Buddha nature? Buddha nature is considered to be equivalent to Shinjin, okay? And that's the key term within Shin Buddhism or Jodo Shinshu, which is the entrusting of the power of the vow, entrusting in Amida's power, entrusting in his power to basically save us, to provide this Buddha nature to us, this seed to us, so that, again, what we then receive or how we are benefited is by virtue of the fact that we then are guaranteed that we will become a Buddha when we enter the Pure Land. So what we gain in this life is basically, again, that assurance or that guarantee. And I believe that status makes us, in effect, equivalent to Maitreya. Why? Because Maitreya in the future will become a Buddha. Now, this is an interesting point because I think that there are some scholars who debate this issue of sort of Buddha nature as a potentiality such that it implies that while there is the potential that we will not become a Buddha until sometime in the future, whether that be by virtue of Shinjin, by virtue, if we're a Pure Land Buddhist, of Amida extending to us that gift of Shinjin, so that we in effect have that assurance, or if you want to think about the self-power kind of oriented approach, that that potential is there until the person exercises various and sundry vigorous practices that will lead him or her to the progress through the stages and ultimately to Buddhahood. Okay, so the concept there is that the potential is there, but that we are not Buddhas in the here and now, okay? But there is a contrasting kind of theoretical orientation called original enlightenment or innate enlightenment. And the idea there is that, in effect, we are Buddhas now. You are a Buddha. I am a Buddha. Everything is a Buddha now. This was criticized and rejected by people within the Pure Land school. And by the way, this original enlightenment concept evolved within the Tendai tradition in Japan. That was the tradition, of course, that had its primary scholarly activities and practice activities on Mount High in Japan, and which spawned a number of the Kamakura era sort of offshoots or new schools within Buddhism, namely Pure Land, Nichirenism, and Zen. So anyhow, there was this competing idea which was rejected by the traditional monks, and it was also rejected most notably by Honen, who was Shinran's teacher. Because again, what his notion was that, again, we can attain Buddhahood by virtue of repeating the Nembutsu, repeating the name of the Buddha, which then results in us being reborn in the Pure Land, where we don't have the kinds of hindrances that prevent us from being able to make progress on the stages and ultimately to attain Buddhahood. Now, there's some scholars apparently who wondered whether Shinran might actually have backtracked into some degree of acceptance of the original Enlightenment theory, partly because of some of the rhetoric that exists in his poems, in his wasan. But in the Kaiga Shinsho, which is his main treatise, his main masterwork, he makes it clear that by having the benefit of experiencing Shinjin as a result of Amida's gift to us, that not that we are Buddhas, but that we will become Buddha. And the way he refined the teaching, or his interpretation of it, was that we become a Buddha, as I understand it, immediately upon our death and rebirth in the Pure Land, at which point we have the option to essentially come back to this Saha world and benefit other beings in the form of a bodhisattva, for example, or in various kinds of forms. So again, just from another little angle, is that the Buddha nature concept, and I've gone off track somewhat with regard to the Shin interpretation, but the Buddha nature concept implies that there's a dichotomy or difference between samsara, which is this world of suffering, and nirvana, which is the state of enlightenment. So again, we are in samsara, and then through various means, various skillful means, if you want to say that, through various approaches, whether they be self-power oriented or other power oriented, in the future we become Buddha. And as I understand it, all Buddhist traditions and followers of various Buddhist paths have that as their ultimate goal, to become Buddha. So there you have the dichotomy between nirvana and samsara, whereas in the concept of original enlightenment or innate enlightenment, that dualism or that dichotomy is shattered in such a way that the thinking there is that we are Buddha now in this life, and that the implication is there's really no practice at that point that's obligatory upon us, which again leads to the potential for antinomianism, as does Shin Buddhism, if we don't take heed of Shinran's key message in the Tanisho, that just because there's an antidote, namely Amida's compassion and the benefit of his vow in the power of the merit that he has transferred to us. Just because there's that antidote doesn't mean we should take a poison. So anyhow, again, my understanding about this is perhaps more rudimentary, and there are a lot of details with regard to Buddha nature and a lot of different interpretations when you go onto YouTube. But I thought I would share these few sort of ideas and notions that may or may not be of help to anybody out there, but I'm throwing it out for what it's worth. Take care. Namo Mita Boots. Namo Mita Boots. Namo Mita Boots.